We'll go now to Michael Kaskey-Blomain. He's our Sixers insider, and find out a little more about the team, including the fact, Michael, that I see that Joel Embiid will play power forward when he's paired with the center, Joel Okafor. What's the latest on that scenario?
Yeah, Pete, good to talk to you, man. It's nice to be on. And, yeah, you're right on top of that. It was announced this morning that Embiid will play tonight at home against the Toronto Raptors. He will be playing his usual 28-minute restriction is in effect tonight. And like you said, he will be starting at the power forward position next to Jahlil Okafor, who will be playing center, which is an interesting move. I think it's an attempt by the team to kind of, try a different formula to see, how those two guys fit together potentially moving forward.
Give me some Twin Towers history that you remember or that you've seen have success in the league. Of course, I guess when Tim Duncan played with David Robinson, when Tim Duncan was a rookie, that was a combination of two big guys that worked. But who are some of the others that jump out to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right there. Obviously, with the main one that I think comes to a lot of people's mind is Tim Duncan and David Robinson with the San Antonio Spurs, which obviously had some success. There's a few other examples back in league history, specifically with the Houston Rockets had Ralph Sampson, and then they drafted Hakeem Olajuwon
the originals
overall.
The originals.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another one that comes to mind. They were able to have some success. There's a few other examples of teams like that throughout league history. So I don't think it's something that's, impossible. But I think, at this point, the Sixers have obviously kind of an overload of big men, and they're just trying, various combinations to see, which one might work best going forward in the future.
Yeah, the law firm of Wallace & Wallace, Rasheed and Ben with the Pistons. The Lakers had Bynum and Gasol. And then, of course, if you're old like me, you think of Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale with the Celtics. So certainly examples across the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's precedent for it.
Michael, Scott Grayson here. As you look ahead and as you pull out your crystal ball here, I saw reports that Ben Simmons was out without the boot, taking some free throws the other day, was not part of shoot-around at all today, was not out there. Does it seem like from what you're hearing or what you maybe – I mean, does your gut tell you maybe this guy's just a little bit ahead of where people thought he would be in his recovery?
Yeah, I think so. I think, all signs and all indications that I've seen since the injury, has first occurred has really been that he's been just on top of his recovery, doing, basically everything that he's needed to do as far as, the rehab, putting in the work off the court. So, if not ahead of the recovery schedule, I think he's, right on the schedule that the team hoped for, which is, of course, a good sign. There doesn't seem to, be any setbacks. Like you said, Scott, he was past couple of days. He's been seen at the practice facility in Camden without a boot, which is, I think a great sign. That, like you said, he hasn't been practicing, but just the fact that, he's kind of walking around without the boot and getting comfortable, I think is a great sign that, he's right on schedule or ahead of it. And I think it's a sign that, Sixers fans should, get ready to expect to see him, probably not this month, but, hopefully sometime in January for his debut.
That's certainly great news. Getting back to Embiid, I know you and Pete obviously were just talking about him. His minutes limit is up to 28 now, but I saw reports that he's a little sore. Is this one of those tests where seeing how he plays through being a little bit sore tonight might kind of push further to seeing if he can extend his minutes limit as time goes on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point, obviously, you have to kind of take the reins off him. It's the team has done, I think, absolutely the right thing in kind of slowly bringing him back into action. Especially after such a long layaway, and then making the physical adjustment to the NBA style of play is tough on any kid. So I do think that they've done the right thing, but eventually the restraints are going to have to come off if he's going to truly be a guy that this team builds and bases their future around. He's, it's not going to work if he's only able to play every other night, 28 minutes a night. So, like you said, I think overall he's fine. In the big scheme of things, I think a little soreness, I guess, at this point is to be expected. And like you said, he's, his shooting has been down a little bit over the past handful of games. to what it was at the beginning of the season. And not that that's, indicative of a slump in any way, but I think we're just starting to see, a little bit of a month into the season, a little of the wear showing up on Joel. And obviously how he handles it will be a big indicator of things going forward. But, I think all has gone about as well as anyone could have hoped for regarding Joel's rookie season so far.
We're talking Sixers basketball with Michael Kaskey-Blomain. He's our Sixers insider. You can read his Twitter posts at The Real Mike KB. And Sixers, of course, play tonight against the Toronto Raptors at 7 o'clock. I do want to get back to Ben Simmons for a second, Mike, and ask you about Brett Brown's comments saying that he might work a bit at the point guard. How would that fit into the lineup?
Yeah, Pete, I think it's a pretty smart move. They kind of hinted about that around the time shortly after he was drafted, about that he could, that they could see him potentially being the point guard of the team, and he could be the guy in the future running the show, a la Magic Johnson, if I'm allowed to go there. But, I think it'll work out well. What we were able to see from him in Summer League was just a guy that had excellent court vision and a feel for the court just beyond his years. It seemed, and this is Summer League, so he's playing with guys that, aren't necessarily of the skill set even of the guys that he will be playing with going forward. But he just seemed to have a feel of, where his guys are going to be on the court, where they should be going, and how to, get the ball to them in positions for them to succeed. And obviously his size, and just physical strength will make him, a problem for opposing point guards to kind of deal with and guard. So, in the best case scenario, it's something that could work out extremely well. His shooting is probably something that he'll have to improve if he's going to, hold that role going forward, as he'll be able to need to space out the floor. But I think, with other big guys already on the roster, namely Embiid and whoever remains, on the roster going forward, assuming one of Noel and Okafor is moved, there's already, a lot of guys in the front court. And I think moving Ben to the point guard kind of just frees things up. And I think he certainly has the skill set to pull it off. So, it should certainly be interesting to watch at least.
Well, you touched on the next guy I was going to ask you about, Nerlens Noel. There was a lot of discussion about how three bigs would fit, and he comes in, plays 8 minutes against the Pelicans, and then gets hurt. How do you see that situation playing itself out, the Nerlens Noel / Okafor, what do they do type situation?
Well, that's the question, Pete. I think, that's probably the biggest question that's kind of been hanging over the team since the season started. I think at this point, everyone's pretty much come to terms with the fact that a move involving, one or both of Okafor and Noel is inevitable. It's just, at this point, probably a matter of which one and where they go. And, the way that this season has unfolded, it just seems like Nerlens is going to be the guy to get moved. Not necessarily saying anything about skill set, but he just seems, obviously he's been the most outwardly unhappy with the situation. He's contract-wise, he's the one, he'll be up to become a free agent in this summer, while Okafor and obviously Embiid are under contract for a couple more years at a cheaper level. It's yet to be seen if the Sixers would want to pay Nerlens, market value this summer, which would be pretty high, considering the rising salary cap. So, there's several factors that go into it. Obviously tomorrow is the December 15th. It's the day that, NBA trade discussions can open. So I expect the Sixers to be involved in it. And I think at this point, I expect it to be Nerlens, the one to be moved. And it's just a matter of, like I said, I think, when and where.
How much do they need him to show he can get healthy and on the court before they do make a move? Would that sweeten perhaps what they could get in return?
Yeah, I think it would. I definitely think that, both of the injuries, the procedure he had at the beginning of the season and this recent ankle sprain, neither I don't think are serious red flag injuries, but combined with, the initial injury of the ACL that kept him out his rookie year. And, I think that there's been some reports, and just, from what I've sensed from being around the team, his kind of general attitude, about the situation is, NBA teams, they talk, things get passed around. I think his attitude is something of a question and a red flag to some other teams, as far as teams that would be potentially interested in taking a flyer on him. So, I think those are both factors that are kind of working against the Sixers a little bit in, their process of trying to find a trade partner. at this point, I don't really know, how much he will play and how much his play will impact, his trade value. I think teams pretty much know what they're going to get in him as a player at this point. I think, it's just a matter of what the Sixers get in return, kind of finding the right deal.
Everybody loves winning streaks, Michael, and the Sixers have a 2-game winning streak, but to get to 3, it's going to be a tough task tonight. Toronto's won 9 of its last 10. They lead the Atlantic Division. Try to put in perspective what this game is going to go down like, and do you think the Sixers can extend the winning streak?
I would love to say that I do. Unfortunately, I don't. I think Toronto is kind of a team that just doesn't match up ideally with the Sixers, mainly in the backcourt. Toronto in Philly native Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan have one of the NBA's better backcourts. And, the Sixers have struggled throughout the season defending opposing point guards. Sergio, especially when he's in there for extended time, and he'll be playing, starting for the team tonight. On-ball defense is not one of his strengths, which, in turn makes it kind of difficult on the rest of the defense. I just think, I think Lowry and DeRozan will kind of have their way with the team tonight. And, the Sixers have done an excellent job of keeping it close and competitive, even in games, recently where they've been overmatched or ended up losing. So I do expect a competitive game. The Sixers have the front court going. Obviously, Embiid's playing. Okafor will be playing. Rashawn Holmes will be playing. So I think they have that going, enough to keep it competitive. But in the end, I think that the play of Kyle Lowry will be the difference.
I'm glad you brought up Rashawn Holmes. You wrote an article for the 97.3 website that you think he should be getting more minutes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. And that's not necessarily, I wasn't necessarily saying he should be getting more minutes, in favor over somebody else. It's kind of just pointing to the fact that based off what he's shown, this is his second season. He, played a, limited role in his rookie year, about 12 minutes a game, and showed, a lot of flashes of potential. And from, what he's shown so far this year, his play has been improved. He's looked better in pretty much all aspects of the game. His rebounding is better. He's worked on his shot over the offseason. And he still has that, the motor and the offensive rebounding instincts that made him stand out last year is still there. So, he's demonstrated on the court in the opportunities that he's been given enough to, garner more minutes. It's just a matter of right now, as we were kind of touching on earlier, there's just this logjam at the front court spot between, Embiid getting minutes. Ersan Ilyasova has been playing a whole chunk of minutes and playing well. Holmes, Noel, Okafor. There's just a lot of guys there, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault per se, but it's also not ideal for, a young player like Rashawn. It's not great for his development. Ideally you'd like to, they have something in him there, obviously. Like when he gets out there, he produces, he's efficient, he puts up numbers. So ideally, you'd be able to, you'd like to be able to take a little bit of a longer look at him, especially in a season like this, which is, not necessarily a lost season, but the team's not also, gunning for a playoff spot. It's kind of more about development and, working on things. And, in an atmosphere like that, you'd like to see a guy as talented as Holmes that has shown as much get, a little bit more than the 15, per or so minutes a game that he's been seeing so far this season.
He is Michael Kaskey-Blomain. In the article on our website, he calls Holmes bouncy, efficient, and an explosive forward with a penchant for offensive rebounding and an endless motor. You can read that article on our website as the Sixers play the Toronto Raptors tonight, 7 o'clock. And, yes, they are 8.5-point underdogs, but you can listen to it here on 97.3 ESPN. Michael, thank you for the time. Scott and I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon, bud.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on.